Hi, it's Wayne O'Keefe here. It's an absolutely beautiful morning. The sun is shining, the flies are buzzing, and there's no breeze or hardly any breeze at all. So I'm in a shaded area here along this stretch of water. I'm going to be fishing for some of the redfin that are in here today. Hopefully I'll sort of land some of those. But the first thing I'll do, even before I unpack, I've just got to the bank now, is I'll throw in some burley to a couple of spots that I'm going to fish. So while I'm actually setting up, that will be working for me. And the first thing you want to do is make sure that the fish know that you're there, but in a good way, so that there's food, there's a meal on. So anytime you take to prepare, if you get a break off on your hook and you have to retie and things like that, you've got circumstances working in your favour. So get that burley in. And the burley can just be simply, it could be different types of breadcrumbs and mixtures, but always with some bait in it. Sometimes all I'll do is get the local soil. I'll chop up some of the bait I've got, like I've got some worms and things like that, a couple of barley grubs. I'll actually put a little bit of that into the soil and throw it out to the spot that I'll be fishing. It always works to have that out there in your favour when you start fishing. Well, I've just arrived, and almost as soon as I put my bait in, because I'd put burley in previously to warm up the area, something just took then. Unfortunately, I think this will be a carp, but it was a first hit very, very quickly. So I've just got to get it in. I almost lost the rod, almost pulled it out of the rod holder. So it just shows you've got to be alert. And he is, yeah, now he's moved into the current, so it makes it really hard on me. So we'll just see what this is. I'm sure, yes, by the way it's fighting, I'm sure it's a carp. But anyway, first fish of the morning and getting one early, never a bad thing. I got him in pretty early, so I sort of was able to pull him in quite fast, which means that he's still got a lot of life left in him, so I might just have to play him with the drag a little bit. And I'm using my son's rod and reel this morning, and he hasn't been maintaining it as well as he should. Matthew, you've got to look after your gear, okay? Anyway, we'll see how... Wow, this is noisy. Just see what I can do with this. One thing about these carp, especially in the warmer weather, is they really put up a fight. So if you want a bit of fun, and maybe the kids want to catch a fish, the most likely fish to catch is a carp, so usually a good target. So this is what created all of that initial fuss. I'd expect this fish here to be about 5 or 6 kilos. So I mean, you can get a lot bigger than that in these waters, of course, and you get other fish, but look, as a first shot in the day, not a bad start. One of the things that I always do when I go fishing is take a range of baits, because you just never know what the fish want on the day, and it's always good to have a choice. You go there with one bait, and if the fish don't want it, then you're not going to come home with anything. So I always have a range of baits. Now, even the range of baits don't always work. So what you can do after that, when all else fails and you've tried your worms and you've tried your barley grubs and you've tried, say, corn and anything else, what you might do is start with cocktails. Now, a cocktail bait is just simply a combination of baits, and what it does is it starts to actually add a bit more complexity into the water on the scents that it gives off. So all the smells that are going down stream or in that water there will add a bit more of attraction to the fish. One of the things I've been doing lately is not only have I been using cocktails, but I've been starting to use attractants with those. So today what I'm using in my fishing is a bait like this. So it's a bait holder hook, and all it's got is the bait holder has a couple of barbs up the shank which will hold something soft like worms in place. Then I've got a piece of corn And that piece of corn there is to, well, potentially to attract the fish, but also to attract things around it like shrimp and yabbies, particularly like corn. So if there's redfin and if there's Murray cod in the area, that is an attractant for the bait that they will take. And when a Murray cod comes along, if he was to see a yabby there, he'd just absorb the whole thing and just suck it all in. And then finally, right on the tip, I've got a piece of power bait. Well, not power bait actually. It's this stuff. It's a trout bait. It's commercial stuff. You can buy it in tackle shops. But what I like about it is it's dark. Now I've had to use silver bait holder hooks here because I didn't have the bronze coloured ones, but this has covered it all, and that dark end there means that they don't see the glint of this in the water. But apart from anything else, this is a real strong attractant. Now you don't use this when you start your fishing. It's generally something that you warm up to because there might be too much complexity in this, but I've been experimenting with this over the last year, and this has caught me fish on tough days, so it's always worth a try. It does work.
After casting in a few more times and getting more burley into the area, I was able to hook into this fish. This day was really unusual though. It had been really calm for quite a long time, and then suddenly a really strong wind blew up for probably only about 10 minutes and then subsided again. At times it was overcast, at times it was sunny. It got very, very hot at one point, and all in one day, but I guess that's Victorian weather for you. So this was a smaller fish than the rest, but because I was using my rod this time, I had lighter line on it, so I had to be really careful because even though this was a small fish, my line was very, very light. The good thing about having the rod that I did, which is quite long, is that acts as a shock absorber, and that can be quite forgiving on light line. So once again, I pulled it in past the current, got it in front of me. I didn't have a net though, so I was going to have to lift it out, so I had to make sure that it was tied before I got it right to the bank. As you can see here, it's not a big fish, but there's so many of these fish about, it just makes the fishing pretty easy and good fun in the warmer weather. Also, I've got a burley cage on there, so I'm always presenting bait close to where my hook is, and therefore drawing the fish to my bait every time. So let this circle a few times, got it close to the bank, and then just lifted it out by hand, which is an easy thing to do with small fish like this. It was all pretty good. About 10 minutes later, the wind calmed right down, as you can see here, and I then hooked into another fish. It was in the same area, so this was just basically from casting to the same spot every time, which is what I do all the time. If I've got a burley cage, I'm putting burley into the same spot, so that will bring the fish around. Once again, it wasn't a big fish, it was about the same size, and all I had to do was play it until it got tight enough to bring it in. The great thing about these waters is that they have an abundance of fish in them. Unfortunately, they do have more carp than they really need, but, well, it's a bit of fun. So I got this close, and I didn't have a net, as was the problem that day, and often I don't bring one. I think in future I might, because I got this fairly close. You can see here I was bringing it in, so I was going to lift it, do a comfort lift out of the water at the bank. So I had to get it right into the reeds right next to my feet to be able to do that. And once I did it, which you can't see here, I tried to pull it up, and unfortunately the hook gave way, and that was an instant release.
Oh my goodness. Now, have a look at that. That is a tiny little Murray cod, which I'll return straight back. Amazing. All kinds of fish around here. And I think he's come on just simply because the barometric pressure is starting to drop, and he's getting hungrier and hungrier. Maybe there's some others out there as well. We'll see. Well, I was just checking my bait, so all I did is I reeled in once, one turn, just to actually see if anything was waiting near the bait, and sure enough, I caught another one of these. So I'd caught one of these little little cod just a couple of minutes ago, and now I catch another one. Quite amazing. They love the worms, and I'm using those baits, those cocktail baits that even have a little bit of power bait on them. So it seems to be bringing in the predators, even though they are very small.